All right, let's talk a little bit about the Roman Republic here, or actually Rome itself. In the yellow is early on Rome. That's when they were actually a republic, and also early Rome had kings, and we'll talk about that later. But the yellow is republic, the green is the empire, and the red is the decline. Now you don't need to know all these dates necessarily. You can always come back to them. Geography, peninsula. Italy is the peninsula of Italy. Rome is right here in the center of Italy. You got the Swiss Alps to the north. You got Sicily down here to the south. And realize that, sorry, here's Rome, and here are the Swiss Alps, and here's Sicily. Okay, so realize that, you know, Rome is not just a city. It's a city today, but it was a city back then, but it's also an empire, the entire known empire of Rome. Fewer mountains and less rugged than Greece, a lot of rolling hills, which allows them to farm better, farm more. In fact, farming is probably their biggest asset to the empire. I mean, they're great, wealth within their farming. Fertile land, main river is the Tiber River. Whoever controls the Italian peninsula at this time controls, the Mediterranean and thus controls the known world. Here it is again. This is Rome right here. There's the Swiss Alps. You can see their mountains. Here's Sicily. Right over here is Greece, where we used to talk. If you remember, we talked. Whoops, let's go back. Here's Greece. Our last thing, there's Athens. So there's not a lot of distance in between these two. So you got Spain over here, Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, Libya, Egypt, Syria, Israel. This is, Turkey. This is Constantinople, and all these areas that we, obviously going to be talking about here next few weeks. The Republic still, this is how Rome starts. This is the legend of it. Okay, Romulus and Remus. According to legend, Rome was founded by the two brothers Romulus and Remus. These two brothers were descendants of early Roman royalty, and according to their legend, their mother, who was a Vestal Virgin, she was blank, hopefully you can understand that, by the god Mars, and she thus had two kids. She was pregnant. The new king was angry at this. His wife was supposed to be a Vestal Virgin. She became pregnant and feared that the brothers one day would come back and claim the throne to themselves, and he didn't want any children that were not his claiming the throne. So he had them all thrown in the ocean and drowned. They survived, and they were founded by a she-wolf. Yes, a she-wolf. She raised these two children as their own, and these are the statues over here. You can see right here. These are the statues right in here. Or that's one of them. And this is a very famous statue over in Rome right now. They returned to Rome to reclaim the throne, but Romulus killed Remus over where the city should be built and who would rule it. So thus Romulus won, and that's why we call it Rome. The legend has it that there were 7 hills on where Rome was founded, and Romulus and Remus were trying to discover or trying to find the best hill to build the city on. And lo and behold, an eagle was flying above. Somehow or another, an eagle landed on this one hill, and that's where Romulus said that's where we need to build it. And Remus was arguing with him about it, so Romulus killed him. Always good to have brothers, you know. So the first settlers, the Etruscans, were the last. I'm going backwards. So the Etruscans, native to northern Italy. Rome adopted their alphabet and their culture. The Greeks were another settlers. They were somewhere in the midpoint of early Rome. Colonized southern Italy and Sicily. Greece was a major influence on Rome. Not as much as the Etruscans, but they were a huge influence. And, probably equal. I will say equal. Latins built the original settlement at Rome way back. So it went from, Latins, they were the first. Greeks were midway. Etruscans were the last. The Latins were farmers and shepherds. Early Rome, the Etruscans made Rome into a superpower. Etruscans mainly had kings to rule Rome. The last king of Rome was Tarquinian the Proud. He was overthrown, and Rome started a republic. The early Romans, the Etruscans, if you want to call them that, vowed to never have another king again. They did not like the way the king ruled them, and they vowed to never have another king again. So they formed a republic, and if you look right here, republic, this is what it is. It's officials chosen by the people, government officials chosen by the people or the citizens, much like the United States. Two classes of citizens in the republic. Remember, republic is the early part of Rome. You have to know these people. Okay, you got to know these classes of people because this is a big ordeal. What we're going to be talking about in the next couple of days. Patricians were wealthy landowners who held most of the power. They inherit all their power and social status. It is given to them through birth. Plebeians, most people were almost the entire population of Rome were plebeians. They were the farmers, the merchants, the traders, the artisans, had little if any political power or influence, could not hold any leadership in the Senate. In time, the Senate allowed them to form their own assembly. Okay, so plebeians eventually get power within the Senate. The Senate is the main governmental body of Rome, Roman Republic. In time, like I said, the Senate is going to allow them to form assemblies. And these assemblies will represent the plebeians within the Senate. And these representatives were called tribunes. Make sure, let me highlight, make sure you know what tribunes are, know what plebeians are, and patricians. These are the three main people. And I don't mean just know their names and that they were wealthy and that these were the most people. I mean, you got to know all the different things that are happening in here. Sorry. And there we go. Tribunes. They were elected representatives of the plebeians. Remember, these guys represented the plebeians within the Senate. Basically there to protect the plebeians and keep the patricians in check. So it's a lot of checks and balances already, much like today's government. Of course, we call them, senators and representatives, and there's all kinds of different little assemblies within each little modern stuff today. Early Roman leaders, writers bragged that they had achieved a balanced government. They really felt that they had, that it was, balanced. The way they could control the power and equalize the power and everything was balanced in that sense, meaning that they had the best of a monarchy, aristocracy or the wealthy rulers, and the democracy. So they were able to combine all those different things into the Roman Republic government. Here's some ideas about the Senate. There was 300 patricians, which are the land-holding upper class. Plebeians were allowed later to be included in the Senate, much later. And if you were a senator, you were a member for life. The councils, okay, 2 patrician executives elected by the Senate. Councils were much like presidents, okay? So you had the Senate, the councils, or the presidents. They took the place of a king. They commanded the army, directed the government, and only served for 1 year. Now, after that year was over, they couldn't serve as council again for another 10 years. One council could veto the other's decisions. Veto, hopefully you know what that is. It means that they just don't like that decision, and it's eliminated. They also had dictators at times, which would take over the entire government, especially during a crisis or a war, to rule for 6 months. Okay, so they ruled for 6 months. Plebeians rising. Let's talk about the plebeians. If you remember, they were the common folk. They were even though they were the majority of the people, they were a minority in the government. So they started to have a little power struggle, and they started to gain power. And the first thing they did, we talked about, was the assembly. Okay, representative groups of Roman government. They were the democratic side of the government. They also included these 2 assemblies, the Centuriate Assembly. This will probably be on the test, but it's just going to be more of a matching. So, we'll talk about it later. But Centuriate Assembly, the patricians controlled the centuriates. Okay, and remember what the patricians are. All right. They controlled and appoint the councils and make the laws. The tribal assembly or the plebeian controlled and elect the tribunes and make the law for the common folks. So you have some different types of groups working within the Senate. Laws of the 12 tables. These are written laws. They weren't ideal laws, but they were eventually
Rome did not have any written down laws for the first, like, I don't know, 100+ years. They finally came up with these 12 tables. Laws written throughout the Roman Empire. Everybody could go up to them and read them and understand them, much like Hammurabi, which probably nobody remembers, but it was a while back that we talked about them. Here's some things, like we said, up until 451, there was no written laws. 12 tables or tablets were created. Here they are right here, the 12 different tables. It was carved on the 12 tablets. They established the idea that all free citizens had a right to protection of law. Here are some of the things that were rewritten
in modern terms. Uh, Rewritten if we were going to talk about them today.
If these are just a few of them. If you are called to appear in the court, you have to go. If you don't, you can be arrested and forced to go. I'm not going to go over all of these. If fruit falls from your trees, it is your fruit no matter where it falls. They would have these kind of laws, yes. You cannot hold a political or business meeting at night. Dinner parties and religious festivals were okay. Everyone who died had to be buried or burned outside the city. So definitely just some strange laws, and I have no idea what's doing that. Sorry. Here are some comparisons right here of our government versus their government. I'm not going to go over everything, but we will have an assignment on this, so you're going to have to look at it anyway. Here's another breakdown of their government. You have the 2 councils, the 300 senators, the 10 tribunes, and all adult male citizens were the citizen assemblies, which were different citizen-type groups that could help also run the thing. Plebeians, as you can see, the majority. They had 1 plebeian council. Majority, Senate, they tried to eventually equalize the Senate and equal representation. That's why there's 3 plebeians, 3 senators, even though it's 300. I'm just giving you an idea. Tribunes were straight plebeians. And if you look at the citizenship, you know that for sure the plebeians were the majority. Here's some pictures of the Roman Senate. That's exactly what it, looked like back then. Of course, this is a painting. And if you look, there's today's. Not a lot of difference. Not a lot of difference.
All right, so this is that was the government. We're going to go, and that's it. We'll talk about the military later.